Hello, everyone. It is Thursday at 3 p.m., which means another edition of the Tom's Hardware Show. As always, I am your host, Michelle Ehrhardt, and I'm being joined by our staff writer, Isaac. Isaac, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Isaac. I am a staff writer at Tom's Hardware. I review PCs, laptops, and gaming peripherals.
Awesome. Isaac's a fairly new addition with us, but we're very excited to have him on. This is his second appearance on the show, and I wanted to bring him on today because we are talking about all sorts of different productivity mice. I got so many in recently because we're updating our best list for it, and I have been working in my home office for like bordering on 3 years now. I just bought myself a keyboard tray, so I'm really excited to upgrade it. And I'm sure a lot of you are also in the same position as me. So I thought today would be a good time to look at general productivity gear with a focus on mice for the office. I've reviewed some of those. Isaac has reviewed some of those. But before we get started, let's go ahead and roll the intro. Okay, so as always, we are taking your comments. So go ahead and leave your comments in the whatever comment box you have down below. We're streaming across multiple platforms at once, and we will be happy to take your questions throughout the show. But before we get started, Isaac, how are you doing? The weather is beautiful today, right?
Yeah, today living in New York, you get a taste of all the elements. Yesterday was a bit breezy. Today is full on shorts weather. I've got a little sunlight creeping into my troll cave here. Um, but forgive any sounds you may hear from both of our microphones. It's an impromptu
Yeah.
nice day outside.
The culture is alive in New York today, which is nice. I could have done for this on Monday instead.
Sure.
Valentine's, it was really rainy then, but you take what you can. Supposedly it's going to rain again later tonight, but I love the view of that afternoon sun through your window, Isaac.
Likewise, yeah, everything looks very bright and happy today.
So, speaking of your window, you're obviously working from a home office. I'm working from a home office, and we're trying to make those as comfortable as possible, right? So, what are you operating on in your home office right now? What's your day-to-day sort of mouse and keyboard setup?
So my setup is mostly for gaming and streaming. So, I have a very geeky background, as you can see behind me. I'm using this MSI Immerse GeForce 60 microphone, as you can see here, which is something that I reviewed that you can find on Tom's Hardware.
Love the
Um,
plug.
absolutely. Also, I'm using the Death Eater combo. So I have like the Death Eater mouse, which is what I'm using right here. I think that's the V3 and the Black Widow V2. That's my keyboard. I would show it on camera, but it is not camera ready.
So
I
those are both Razer, right?
Yeah. So as you can see, I also have these V3 Pros right here cracking. So I'm kind of under that Razer ecosystem. And I feel like, with the help of the software and stuff like that, it can really just match any kind of RGB setup you have, which I have right here. I have all the purple and blues firing on all cylinders here.
So I feel like that's actually a perfect transition to our next topic, which is we want to talk about Razer's gotten into productivity gear within the past couple of years. And I know you reviewed one of their mice, but before we get into that, I want to give a quick rundown of my home work setup lately,
Sure.
which has been let me see if I can get it out of its mouse bungee and show it off on camera. But I love to do this live. So I have been working with a Logitech G402 Hyperion Fury, super old mouse. It like came out before the Proteus Core, the Hero that everyone uses, but it's still a gaming mouse. It works for my purposes. It does have extra buttons, but as I've learned lately, not the best thing if you're going to be, you know, just typing all day, which is what I do for my the most of my time at my computer now. Before the pandemic, my computer was largely a gaming center. Now gaming is like the minority of what I do at my computer. So I've been having to rethink how I use it. Which I think I'm going to get a new keyboard soon as well. This show isn't necessarily to talk about keyboards as much, but I'm using a Razer Huntsman keyboard, which is a sort of RGB 10 keyless as well. It's got optical keys, which make it kind of convenient for both gaming and typing, because I feel it has the perfect resistance there. But, you know, neither of those things are productivity focused gear. And, you know, before me, I used to think like, I can use gaming gear for everything. I'm a gamer. But over the past couple of years, my wrists and my fingers have really started to hurt from like repetitive strain, to the point where I figured out like, you know, I don't play shooters as much as I used to. When I do game, it's largely on controller. I
Right.
think I'm going to have to swap out my controller and mouse for office style gear. And I don't think I'm the only one, which is why we see Razer moving into its Pro line. So
Right.
since you're in the Razer ecosystem, Isaac, why don't we start off with you? I know you have the Razer Pro Click Mini mouse on hand, correct?
Right. So this is what I use on those days that I do go to the office, or those days where I do use my work laptop. As you can see, it's super portable. It's for that reason alone. I have extreme amounts of fun using it, taking it place to place. If you take this little faceplate off here, you can get some little storage right here for the
That's sick. I didn't know you
2.3.
could take the faceplate off.
Yeah, I really love the little storage you can do here. One of the kind of cons I had about this mouse is that it does use two AA batteries to function, which makes it like twice as heavy than it should be. Um, but I do love the placement of it. Um, like I said, it's ambidextrous also. So you know, if you're left-handed or right-handed, it's pretty fine. It's very small. It fits right in my palm of my hands. It has like dual functions for the track here. You can
Oh, it's got
have it
smooth scrolling and ratcheted
smooth.
scrolling.
Yeah, just click this button right here, up or down, to switch between the two.
That's awesome. I feel like what is it? Smooth scrolling is something that I don't see in a lot of gaming mice. But
Right.
I absolutely love it for when I'm working in the office.
Yeah, when I'm working in the office, that's my go-to, is just to have that. I like having a choice.
Right. So
Yeah,
if you're not aware, I have another mouse here. This is the Logitech Triathlon M720 mouse, which I'll talk about later, but it's got this little button here. Right now I have it set to a ratcheted mode. So like when I scroll it, it scrolls like until I take my finger off of it and then it
right.
stops. But if I press this button, it's on a smooth scrolling mode. And if I scroll it, it'll keep going after I press it until I stop it physically, or until it like
Uh,
runs out of steam. It's not a perpetual motion mouse. But that allows you to very quickly get through web pages. But anyway, other features on the ProClick Mini. Sorry, Isaac, didn't mean to cut you off.
no worries. So, like, you know, it has the 2.0 USB, but then also if you go right here, I don't know if you can see that, there's a little switch where you can switch to Bluetooth mode. So, you know, if you're working between two kind of workstations, like I am here, if I'm working between my desktop right here and my work laptop, I can just quickly switch between the two, kind of keep productivity at an all-time maximum. I run two dual monitors here. Um, so sometimes I need a quick third, or just a quick third screen or something like that, but it's not necessarily connected to my desktop here. I love being able to
Hmm.
switch over to that different laptop. One thing that I think I had a problem with, but it's not really, well, it is kind of a big deal, is that because it's productivity, you would assume that it can work on like an Apple device laptop, but it
Hmm.
doesn't. It's strictly Windows,
That's
which
something I've
hard for
noticed
me.
too. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like
No,
I
no, no.
gave my Razer also came out with a webcam recently, the Razer Kio Pro. which I reviewed, and then I handed off to my boyfriend who sits behind me to use. He works on a Mac, and he tried to use it with that, and he couldn't use the software on it. So like it immediately lost a bunch of functionality.
Yeah, I don't kind of get the logic behind that. I mean, as far as wanting to branch out into a productivity market, or you wouldn't like have support for Macs and MacBooks and such. Also, there's not a lot of software customization. I understand why that is. Like, there's no lighting on this, for instance, even though there is lighting on the keyboard counterpart for this device. I forget what the name is exactly, but I would have liked just a little matching lighting, but that might just be me.
That's
As you can
actually
see,
interesting because we do have a viewer question here from Confused Council, which I love that name given what I'm about to read. He says, I tend to gravitate towards gaming laptops over business laptops for productivity, but the RGB can be off-putting for an attorney trying to look professional, which has easiest RGB to turn off. So we don't have gaming laptops on hand to show off right now, but usually any of those, you can turn off the RGB completely, either through a function row plus number row setting that's built in. You'll usually find something that looks like a keyboard with like light popping off of it. And if you press that button, you can turn it off, or through the software built into it. So Razer Synapse has software, Asus Armory Crate has software, Lenovo Vantage has software, all of which make it pretty easy to adjust the RGB. But Isaac, you're telling me that you like having RGB, and that's something that you would like to see in the office. I do think that's an unusual opinion, but I think it matches because the Razer Pro Click Mini is meant to go with the Razer Pro Type, which is the company's keyboard that does have RGB, and still meant for office work.
right. And like, it's not necessarily, a complete spectrum of color. It's just like a little like raised color as you would have in any kind of contemporary like keyboard with a backlight function. But, just a little bit of lighting, just regular lighting across the Razer naming scheme, something I would have liked. I just associate lighting with the Razer name. So just to have one product that doesn't have it, even though the sister product does, is kind of weird to me, but that's just me.
Right. I think that's a fair ask. Like we said, you can easily turn RGB off, so it wouldn't harm anyone to have it there. And I think that's something to consider in a second gen. Also, Mac support, vitally important for a productivity device,
Yeah.
especially since a lot of office issued computers are Mac. So even if you're a PC person, like I am, like we can see Isaac is, it's still important to be able to work across ecosystems. But one thing I do want to ask before we move on is like, we've been saying, oh, this is for productivity. This is for productivity. What aside from that white and gray color scheme makes it like non-gaming though, right? How does it feel in your hand? I know also it frames itself as being a more silent operated mouse, and it's smaller than your typical gaming mouse. I know you've got your Death Adder there to compare it to, but what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as productivity goes, this is as light as a feather. It's probably one of the more lightest mice I've ever used. Um, like I said, I'm used to using the Death Adder, which is kind of more like hand fitting my Gorilla kind of grip, and this is a way more smaller affair. I've never kind of messed with a palm in hand sort of mouse before. And tell you the truth, I always never really bought into the kind of functionality or productivity mouse can bring to somebody actually doing productivity. But the form factor, the the lightness, the, the storage, the portability of it all. Um, I really can't see myself working without this thing. uh, at least as of now, for now, until I review something a little bit better, maybe a 3.0 version of this or some such. Um, but yeah, not to mention the design, like it doesn't stray too far from the original Pro Click design. I love that they kept it. I love the ambidextrous nature of it. I've never attempted to use a mouse with my left hand, but with this, I kind of have an ambidextrous approach to how I
Awesome.
grab a mouse now, which
That's
I've
a
never had before.
pretty resounding endorsement then. So thank you for touching on the Razer Pro Click Mini, Isaac. We're 15 minutes into the show, so I think I want to move on to the next mouse. But that's definitely great input. And it's good to know that the Pro Click Mini differs from its brethren in more than branding through like how small it is and how lightweight it is. I've also been looking at productivity gear lately, and I think I'm going to swap tracks a little more greatly here. I'm going to talk about this, which is the Logitech Ergo M575 mouse. So the Pro Click Mini, we were looking at it, and it functions differently from a typical Razer gaming mouse, but it's still like you move it around like a Razer mouse. It has the Razer branding. I bet you could fool someone who isn't super into like the nuances of mice into thinking it's a gaming mouse. But this is completely different and functions very differently. This is a trackball mouse, which again isn't a new thing. We've had these since the 90s, but they've fallen out of favor, as we've gotten better, optical tracking mice. But after using this for a few days, this is a modern one. It costs about $55. And I have to say, I love it. And I wish we didn't move away from trackball mice because it's absolutely terrible for gaming, right? You can't get precise like movement with this kind of trackball thing. But what you can get with productivity work is I dropped it. Totally professional. You can drop your mouse is what you can get. But no, what you can get with productivity work is you never have to move your hand at all. All of the mouse cursor movement is done with this trackball. There is no sensor on the bottom, which means you completely avoid repetitive strain injury. A lot of the things that makes mice and keyboards so unergonomic is you're constantly moving your hands around in different directions. And then you're also constantly moving them in the same direction. And, it's like running in place all the time. If you're going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down with your mouse all the time, and maybe your, desk isn't completely level with your chair, you're going to be straining your wrist every time you do that. But this, you sit down, you put your hand on the mouse. It is a large mouse, which means you can drop it if you're holding up like this. But you put your hand on the mouse, and then, excusing bathroom breaks, you do not need to move your hand until the end of the workday, which completely negates repetitive strain injury. And you'd be surprised how quickly you can adapt to using a trackball. I also love the shape of this mouse. It's a little bit wider, which means you can just sort of palm it like this. It's an unusual shape for me. I usually use like a sort of claw grip with my mice. So if I grab this one, I sort of move it around like this. But this is a lot more comfortable for me for long times as well. And then I'm going to install a keyboard tray under my desk later today to try to be able to move my keyboard into into a more ergonomic position with where my chair is. But that also means I'm not going to have as much space to move around my mouse on it. So this is great if you don't have a huge footprint on your desk as well, because yes, while the mouse is fairly large compared to other mice, it doesn't have to move at all. So it effectively has a much smaller footprint than those other mice.
How does it feel to hold it? Because it almost seems like you have to position your hand like a catcher's mitt in order to like hold it.
I would say actually a catcher's mitt is a perfect comparison. I also kind of feel like I'm, laying my hand on like a Minority Report control and just like leaving it there and melding with the machine to control it. You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I feel kind of like you're an anime fan. I'm an anime fan. We can't rely on our viewers to know this, but I feel like this is kind of like a plug suit for my computer, which is what mecha pilots wear when they when they pilot their giant robots. I feel like I'm just like touching my computer and leaving my hand there and being one with it when I use this.
That's what's going to say. You are one with the device.
Yeah. So we have another comment from Confused Council, which is trackballs or how I played Crystal Castle in the arcade back in the 80s. The cabinet came equipped with a trackball that lit up, so they can be used for retro gaming. That is true. For games like Marble Madness or games that were built with trackballs in mind, this is actually like the perfect way to control it. I just wouldn't play a shooter with it because like it has the same problem with an analog stick, right? Where you're pushing the cursor rather than, picking it up and placing it down in a precise location. It does take a little bit of getting used to for actually working with it. I found that the most difficult thing was actually copy paste, because the idea of like getting this over the exact letter I want, holding down both my thumb and the index finger, scrolling it until I was done with what I wanted to copy, and then lifting the index finger off, but not the thumb, or vice versa, was a bit of an unnatural action for me. But unlike an ergonomic keyboard, I feel like I learned this thing within the space of a day. So big endorsement for me. I'm currently working on updating our best wireless mouse page, which will have all productivity mouse on it. But this is like probably the most unique one I looked at, despite like trackball is a proven design. It's a modern, affordable trackball. And I've learned that I really like trackball. Having grown up in the 90s and 2000s, it's not really something I used a ton growing up.
Sure. So there was, I don't mean to like maybe take you off pace here, but there's one mouse that you've been showing. You showed me before we went live, and then you showed it right at the start.
Mm-hmm.
One that bends.
Right. So I do want to get into that, but I do want to answer a user question here. Chet asks, can you touch on webcams as well? Absolutely. Sure, I can. We have a best webcams article that I update once monthly. I do not have my webcams prepared. Like if I look down at my desk, you can see all these mice I have prepared to talk about, but I'm happy to recommend them to you. Currently, I'm shooting on the Dell Ultra Sharp webcam, which is $200, pretty expensive, but it's got like, I feel like almost mirror-like quality. It can stream in 4K, can do 1080p at 60 FPS. It's probably my favorite premium webcam. And then for something more budget, we're always happy to recommend the Logitech C920, which is about $80, and is a lot lower quality than this. Tops out at 1080p at 30 FPS, but is more than what most people will need for like office video calls, especially given that services like Zoom and Google Meet limit bandwidth.
I wanted to point out that that's actually what I'm using right now. So if you wanted a good
you are
litmus test for what the quality
perfect.
is.
You look great. I feel like you look better. Maybe I need to calibrate my C920 more. I do have an older model. They have several revisions of it, but it's still the same base sensor. But yeah, you can see the difference. And I'm shooting on the premium webcam, the Logitech Dell, not the Logitech, the Dell Ultra Sharp webcam, and then Isaac shooting on the Logitech C920. We also have a comment from Harutu M, regular viewer of the show, who mentions the Brio. That would be the Logitech sort of comparison to the Dell Ultra Sharp. It's a $200. I think it's usually on sale for around $180. 4K webcam that can do 1080p at 60 FPS. The reason you'd get 60 FPS for a webcam is, say you're a game streamer and your game footage is streaming at 60 FPS. You probably want your face cam to match that, just to avoid messing people up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you mentioned a mouse that I had been showing off earlier. And it's nice. We've been talking about Logitech so much. We should talk about a competitor. This is the Microsoft Arc mouse, and it looks like a TV remote.
Yes,
but it is not. It is a perfectly plain looking mouse. It's just got this one rubbery area. This doesn't have any input at all. And then it's got this one touchpad. So it's a very stylish, low-key mouse, and it's very lightweight and can fit in a bag easily, but you can't use it. when it's in this sort of flat section like this, which I think is a little bit of a shame. I wish you could like swap between it like a transformer, but to actually use it, you need to bend it. And then once you've bended it, you have this sort of small arc shape that lifts your hand up and encourages you to use a palm grip with the mouse, which is supposed to be more ergonomic. I do have one viewer question that I want to transition to really quickly. The quality of the camera is demonstrated by being able to make the Gundam models behind Michelle. I'm glad those are there for scale and comparison, have a totally legitimate professional use. But thank you, Confused Council, for that comment. But yeah, this mouse is I'm not sure how to feel about it. The one positive I think is, like I said, I'm normally a claw grip or fingertip grip person, but with this mouse, I kind of unconsciously use the palm grip. And it's pretty impressive that it's able to like make me use a grip style I don't normally use. It means my palm does get support that it doesn't normally get. I can see that helping me after, several hours of work. But at the same time, you can see my pinky finger and my thumb are slipping off of the mouse right now. And I don't have particularly large hands. I don't know how you would appreciate this, Isaac. You were talking about having larger hands earlier.
Right. Yeah.
But then another issue with this mouse is it doesn't have a scroll wheel on it. You can scroll with it, but it's all capacitive touch activated. And it's not the smoothest experience. You can't feel the mouse, but my finger feels like it's kind of dragging on it. You can't really get a precise experience with it. The left click and right click are also not separate buttons. It's just separate zones on the mice that activate them. I didn't find myself confusing them too much when I was using it. Like I didn't find myself, I pressed left a little too hard and I ventured into the right click territory. But, it is possible. It's not distinct. This mouse is great for portability. It's great for training yourself to use maybe a more ergonomic, grip style. But I think it's got a cool gimmick. And it's certainly not the only mouse with this gimmick, which is why I wanted to show it off. But I feel like a lot of mice like these, it's sort of style over substance. And that's something you need to look out for with ergonomic mice. The companies can make a lot of claims, but just like with supplements, they're all not always backed by actual science.
Right. I was going to say that looks much more like a style over substance kind of mouse. It looks like the ideal kind of mouse for like somebody who has a corner office, has a minimalist like design in their office, maybe into Star Trek, because it gives off a very sci-fi, Star Trekky and minimalist kind of vibe. But yeah, it looks like, no kind of scrolling, the having to fold it. Seems like a lot of stuff to kind of justify.
Exactly. We have a comment here from Marutu M who says Apple Mouse, which funny you should mention that because I have an almost exact copy of that right here with the Microsoft Modern Mobile Mouse, which looks a lot like the Apple Magic Mouse. It doesn't have a touchpad on it, but it's kind of like what I was hoping this would be when I said I was hoping you could use it flat, right? Like the reason I want this to be able to be used both in arc mode and flat mode is that if you could use it in flat mode, that makes this mouse kind of obsolete, right? Because then it could do the same thing. But it doesn't make the mouse unnecessary because it's more expensive than it. This is like $20. This is like $40, $50. I'll have the actual prices in the articles. I'm working off of memory right now. But, this is like the definition of a stylish mouse, an easily portable mouse. It's incredibly lightweight and it's incredibly thin. Like here's another ergonomic mouse that I'll get to later. But it's not necessarily strictly ergonomic, more so than productivity, because it's just this rectangle. It's not going to hurt your hands, but it'll jut into the side of your hands. It's not made to fit them either. It is literally as like unobtrusive as a mouse could be. What I said in my article about it is like this mouse's approach to making a mouse comfortable is to put as little mouse in your hand as possible, which pans out to some degree. It's great for fingertip and claw grip, but you do have to get your fingers fairly wide to get the whole thing. And you don't have a lot of you don't have extra buttons. You don't have a ratcheted scroll wheel. It's literally just like click, click, click in, up, down. It's, probably the most basic mouse I'm going to show off today, but it's $20. So that's maybe a little expensive for what this is. Very portable though. But for $20, you could also get, if you want a basic mouse, this, which is the Logitech Control Plus M510. I don't want to talk about it for too long because it's not the most interesting mouse in the world. But like the Logitech C920 is for webcams, it's sort of the base when it comes to productivity mouse or mice from Logitech, at least. It's got 2 side buttons. It's got 1 scroll wheel that you can up, down, left, right with, which is already more than what the Microsoft mouse was offering. It's got this sort of, also it encourages a palm grip with its, sort of thumb rest sitting out here. It's got an ambidextrous design, which I know Isaac said he likes. And it's also $20. So, equivalent to this, but a lot more function, maybe not as stylish, but I'm not the person who's trying to show off in the office,
Yeah, if productivity, it's, I'm not looking for stylish more than I am something to just blend in.
Right. This is another comment from Ru2M who says gamers gonna want the 16,000 DPI and 10 billion clicks mice, which I think is interesting because it's something that I should mention. This mouse not so much. This mouse not so much. This mouse definitely you can moonlight in gaming with. It's got a 1,000 DPI max, which is very small for gaming. But I don't know about you, Isaac. I'm not swapping my mouse every time I open a video game. I usually just use one mouse with my computer, which is why I've been using a gaming mouse for productivity for so long, which is why I'm uncomfortable at work and I'm looking to change. But 1,000 DPI is still plenty, I think, for most use cases. Let's say you're using a shooter, which is where something like sensitivity matters most. A lot of the pros for those games will top out at 800 DPI because if they have enough space on their desk to move their mouse, it gives them more precise control over how far they move their cursor. Because if they have it set to 16,000 DPI and they move like this, the cursor is going to go whoo, across the screen and they're going to move past whoever it is they're trying to shoot.
Yeah, so I didn't mention that in the ProClick Mini, and that's one of the problems. Well, not a problem, but something that I noticed because this setup here particularly, I use 2 monitors, one of them being a 48-inch CX LG CX, and so DPI was fairly important to me, and via the software, the ProClick Mini can only go up to 12,000, which in any other instance is perfectly fine. If I'm using this on my work laptop or a productivity laptop, that's more than enough. But I do have a gaming setup here, so the more DPI the better. And this 48-inch, I did find it to be a little I'm taking a second to get to this next screen here than I'm usually used to. But in the sense of productivity, not everybody's going to have this extreme huge setup like I do.
I mean, but that's a very good point, though. I've been ignoring DPI when talking about most of these mice, but, I can go through it really quickly, going off of memory a little bit. This is the Logitech M510. It caps out at about 1,000. These Microsoft mice cap out around 1,500, I think. Oddly enough, this Logitech M575 Ergo Trackball Mouse is the highest DPI mouse among them at 2,000. Still fairly low DPI. You're not going to get above 5,000 with anything except the Razer mouse. So that's really interesting to hear that goes up to 12,000. I think that, it's Razer, but I think that would make it a particularly good mouse to also, moonlight and gaming with, which is what I like to say. But yeah, trackballs are great for certain games, but this is probably the worst mouse that I've shown off so far for gaming, even though it's my favorite one for work. So what I might actually do is, even though I said I won't swap between mice all the time is now that I'm going to have my keyboard tray, I'll put this on the keyboard tray and I'll put this on the desktop, and then I can use both easily.
That's pretty fair.
Yeah. But I do have a couple more mice I want to show off. I know I feel like QVC here. I hope it doesn't feel repetitive. But I've tried to gather things that have unique or interesting features. We're not going to be able to go through the whole breadth of non-gaming peripherals here. But, I want to give you an idea of what to look for when you're shopping. So this is, actually, let's save that for later. I don't want to do Logitech. This is interesting. This is the Rapu MT750S, which is a company you've probably never heard of, and a ridiculous string of consonants and numbers. And the reason for that is it is a clone of the Logitech MX Master 3, which is currently our #1 favorite productivity mouse. All of these productivity mice we're looking at, by the way, are wireless because lag isn't a huge deal when you're just typing stuff up or going through spreadsheets or whatever. And we find wireless to be just a touch more comfortable. I don't like the feel of a mouse dragging across my desk. And
Right.
I don't think most people want to bring a mouse bungee to the office. Even though this costs like $15. It's great. My Logitech gaming mouse feels like it might as well be wireless now, but that's neither here nor there. But what makes this mouse comfortable and what makes the Logitech mouse that it's based on kind of gold standard is it's got this very prominent thumb rest there. So if you're right-handed like I am, you can really just grip the mouse completely, almost more so like a catcher's mitt than the Ergo, like Isaac was saying earlier. And then aside from these extra buttons, it's got a little side scroll wheel here. So instead of having to push your scroll wheel left and right up here, you can just take your thumb and scroll left and right like this. Or on a good version of this mouse, you could remap it to be your up-down scroll. And then, you still have to move the mouse around to move the cursor. It's not going to be as little movement as the Ergo mouse, but it reduces the repetitive strain on your fingers at least a little bit, right? The reason I said on a good mouse you can remap it is this Rapu being a cheaper clone of the Logitech. The MX Master 3 is about $100. Unfortunately, I don't have it on hand to show you. This is about $50, and it does not come with software. So you are stuck with the mappings it has out of the box, which is a bit of a shame. You've got all these extra buttons. You've got very little programmability. So this is only going to scroll left or right, which, Isaac, I feel is something I don't need to do that often. Do you do it that often?
No. It's kind of weird. A mouse that has that many buttons and there's no kind of software to reprogram it at all. It feels like a huge waste of potential, and it just points out how more so of a clone that it actually is. Yeah, all it really had to do was just include some kind of software.
Right.
Is this the mouse that you were looking at before we went live?
This is the mouse that I was looking at before we went live. So I'm still in my review process. And like I said, this is for a best picks list, not like a proper review. I might not include this on the list. I don't really like it that much. Every other mouse that I've been looking at lately, like I said, we're really trying to expand our productivity mouse coverage. I'm going to include on the list even this, which has a bunch of caveats, because it has some unique niche use cases that other people can't use it for. If you want that palm grip style, but you want it something more easily portable than this, then this is good for you. But this, I would say, go for the MX Master 3, which has the same footprint and is what this is trying to clone, but is far more configurable, which I think is something you want if you're going to spring for all these extra buttons. Right now, this is just forward, back, up, down, regular middle click, which I think right now is the thing that activates scrolling by moving your mouse up and down. And then this is a, left and right, and it's kind of a stiff scroll wheel too. One thing that this does have though, that I do want to point out is it has this one button here that lets it sync to multiple devices via Bluetooth. So like rather than having to use the USB receiver to sync it to one device and the Bluetooth to sync it to another device, and then swap between those devices by swapping the input mode, you can just press this and sync it across multiple Bluetooth devices. I still don't like this mouse, but it brings me to the final mouse that I wanted to look at today, which is the Logitech Triathlon M720. You get it? So this has a little button right here, 1, 2, 3, and it does exactly what I was talking about on this, and lets you easily swap between multiple devices just by pressing this one button, even if they're both using Bluetooth.
Okay.
So that I think is useful. It's also got the smooth scrolling and the ratcheted scrolling. It's the only mouse I've looked at right now, or in this stream, that has that. It's got 2 side buttons. It's got this weird little button that you wouldn't know it has called a gesture button. You can't really see me doing anything with it. You just see my finger bouncing back and forth, but you can push it in and it'll give you another function. And it does actually feel like a proper button, even though it doesn't look like one. And then all of these Logitech mice in their battery compartment have a USB receiver here. This is called the Logitech Universal or Unifying Receiver. It is what you use to get your 2.4 gigahertz connection, but you can also do the Bluetooth connection by just holding the device swap button for a few seconds. So that is cool in and of itself. Like, I've got a few comments here. That is a cool feature. Swapping between multiple devices is a better extra feature than DPI adjustments for me. I would agree. And I also think that, what was I going to say with that? It's not the only, it's not the end of this mouse's features, though. One thing else that it can do is, here we go. It has Logitech Flow support. So like Confused Council mentions, Logitech Flow automatically switches between devices when you move mouse to the edge of the screen. So like you were saying earlier, Isaac, you have your Razer mouse set to Bluetooth for one device and then USB for another device. So if you're having your laptop off to the side as a secondary monitor, you might swap it to Bluetooth to activate that laptop, right? But what a Logitech Flow can do is you can just set it so that you have your laptop off to the side next to your monitor here. You go into the Logitech Options software and turn it on. And then when you move your mouse cursor all the way to the right of your monitor, it'll move over to your laptop and start controlling your laptop as well. Which brings me up to what I was going to say earlier, is kind of like a KVM style feature. If you're not aware of what a KVM switch is, it's something that allows you to use any mouse or keyboard across multiple devices. But it can be a bit tricky to find the right one, and there's frequently lag with it. This builds it right into the mouse and adds some extra productivity with it as well. Like, for instance, when you're using Logitech Flow and you're controlling multiple devices just by moving it across the cursor across the screens naturally, yeah, that means you can use your laptop as a secondary monitor, but it also means that you can easily copy something with one device, drag it over to your other device, and then paste it. And boom, you've kind of like Apple AirDrop moved a file easily without needing to deal with that kind of proprietary software.
Yeah, that's actually great. And I like the effortless like transition between going between one device to the other device, because with my Razer Pro Click Mini, I have to literally pick it up every time I want to switch and then do this with my thumb and remember which way my thumb has to go. Am I switching over to Bluetooth? Do I have to go up for that? Do I remember? Do I have to go down for 2.4 gigahertz connectivity? I like that the buttons are just right here. You can cycle through it, or you can just use the copy and paste click function, and you can have complete copy and paste between machine. It really is kind of a pretty neat hack.
Right. So there is a drawback to it, which is that technically other mice can easily do that sort of functionality, right? So
Right.
if you have your mouse here, your Logitech Triathlon, and your Logitech Ergo mouse. This Ergo mouse can connect both via USB receiver and Bluetooth as well. So, like you did with the Razer thing, you can connect something via USB receiver, something via Bluetooth, and to swap between them, you turn the mouse over and click the button that swaps between the different connectivity standards. It's not as many devices connected at once as this. You have to do two different standards for what, a unique standard for each device, whereas this can do 3 Bluetooth if you want. But, if you only have 2 devices and you don't see yourself using Logitech Flow, this can kind of do the same thing, as well as any other, device that can connect both via Bluetooth and via USB, which also applies, keyboards, even gaming controllers. But it's still, if you got more than 2 devices, say you are carrying a few work laptops with you rather than working at a desktop, or Logitech Flow, where you can easily sort of airdrop things to yourself. This is kind of a unique mouse. It's only like $25, I think. So it's not that much more expensive than this. No, actually, sorry. This is $20. This is $40. I'm operating off of memory live here. But still, it's affordable compared to other ergonomic mice. And I say ergonomic because it's got that nice sort of shape that encourages you to do a palm grip. It's not as big as, say, this. So like with the Microsoft Arc mouse, my fingers are kind of sliding off of it a little bit, but it'll do pretty much anything that this mouse or even this mouse will do, which is the Rappo MX Master clone, without charging you above $50, which some of the more expensive Logitech Ergo mice can do, and while having that sort of unique connectivity thing going on. Okay, so that is pretty much all of the mice that I've prepared to look at. Obviously, that's a lot of mice, and that's not the only ergonomic thing. You can get. We have a best keyboards list as well. I do not have all of those in my home office, so I can't show them off on camera as easily. But something that I would recommend for a productivity keyboard is you want either 75%. Or a full size, or a 10 keyless, one of the larger types of keyboards. I am good with the 10 keyless because I just don't use my number pad at 10. But if you do use the number pad, you want full size. And you either want one of those curved shapes that separate the keys out into distinct zones so you can keep your hands far apart and not move them a ton. Again, the thing we're trying to eliminate for ergonomics is repetitive strain injury. So you don't want to be going center row, center row, center row, out to here, shift to here. You want to be able to just lay your hands and keep them in place, which again is why this is probably my favorite mouse of the bunch, what I looked at today. But if you can't get one of those, you can also I think mechanical keyboards, because their feedback aren't just good for gaming, they're great for productivity. You'll probably want a heavier switch though. So think of something like a blue switch, which is completely tactile and takes a little bit of force to push down, or a brown switch, which doesn't take as much force, but still has a bump at the top so that when you push it down, you can feel your fingertip pressing against something, I've pressed this button and I can move on. Isaac, I know you're in a gaming setup, but like you said, you've tried out the Razer Pro Click Mini and you said you can't live without it now. So I've shown off so many devices now. What do you think about these ergonomic peripherals or these productivity peripherals?
Well, I was digging the clone mouse that you showed me. I forget the name of it already until you told
Rappo MT750S.
Yeah, that name. And I was with you until we pointed out all those flaws that it has, especially when you compare it to the mouse that it's trying to knock off.
Right.
But
I like the size of it. It holds my whole hand about as well as the trackball mouse does. And like I said, I adjusted to trackball, but it's still not for everyone. This operates more like a traditional mouse.
But that last mouse that you just showed just now, I feel like could double as a productivity mouse as well as a gaming mouse. Like I could see myself using that at my workstation here. for gaming, but also as like, because like you
It's
said,
the
this is
triathlon.
yes, the triathlon. It's like you said, my setup now is more so for like max amount of typing and productivity as opposed to gaming. But if I had a mouse like that, I could easily see myself using it for one, consolidating it for both uses, as opposed to like, me feeling like I would have to run to my Pro Click Mini when I wanted to get some productivity kind of work done.
It is kind of the same size as the ProClick Mini, right? I
Right.
should mention all of the mice that I've looked at today, much to my chagrin, all of them operate off of like double A's and triple A's, right? So they're not rechargeable. You're going to have to go more expensive for that. You're going to have to live like you're in the 90s, dropping by the Dwayne Reed or the Walgreens every couple of months to get new batteries. But it does keep the weight down, I guess, compared to a lithium, but know that it will be more weighty than, say, a direct USB connection via wire.
Does it function off of one battery? The ProClick Mini actually does. You can take one battery and put it in there, and it's fine.
That's a unique feature. I haven't tested it with any of these mice yet, but
Okay.
all the mice that I've shown off today either suggest a specific amount of batteries, but they don't suggest, either one battery or two battery.
Okay.
So like some of them have two batteries. This, I believe, has two batteries, but this has one battery. This has one battery. It really depends on the mouse.
That's good.
And then we have another comment here from Jeremy Crandall. Wish I could game on mouse and keyboard. Hands are formed to claw after years of console gameplay. Same. I grew up on a claw. I do use a claw for like Monster Hunter on the 3DS, but like I grew up on console. My carpal tunnel naturally kind of rests my hands in this position. I do have learned to play shooters on mouse and keyboard for that extra level of control, where you can pick up the cursor and drop it instead of pushing it with an analog stick. But
Right.
I haven't been playing as many shooters lately, as Overwatch has kind of fallen out of favor. That was my shooter, and I've gotten back into MMORPGs. Those are also console, and those are also mouse and keyboard games, with the exception of my favorite critically acclaimed MMORPG, Final Fantasy XIV, which works perfectly with the controller, but I'm getting off topic. I know.
No,
I
I
think not next show, but I think one of these shows coming up, I should go through controllers like I just did mice.
Sure, absolutely. I was gonna add on to that by saying, for some reason, the only game I'm proficient playing with mouse and keyboard on is Mass Effect 2. For some reason, specifically Mass Effect 2.
I
I don't
did
know
play
why.
Mass Effect on a mouse and keyboard. I got that was the first game I played on the first gaming laptop I got in high school, and I was just so amazed that something that was so much smaller than a 360 could run like a 360 level game and better.
Right.
But
Right, yeah, and that's how I first experienced Mass Effect 2, and it took me a little while transitioning from console to mouse and keyboard, but I ended up doing it. But for some reason, yeah, now it's a lot more strain on my hands to have to move at that faster pace, and the
right.
carpal tunnel is real.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting older. I'm one of the younger people on our team. I don't want to sound like I'm saying, "Oh, I'm so old," but I'm at that point where my body is starting to lock up and I have to watch what I eat, and I can't just ignore my needs anymore, which is why it's so great to look at these devices that are meant to accompany that. I can't just be like, "Oh, I'll just use my gaming stuff for everything."
Right. Yeah, I feel like in a lot of your recommendations today, it was a lot of, this is going to help with how your hand is positioned. This is going to help you combat, arthritis in the fingers or carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
And with productivity, especially, when you're working, those should be number one reasons to gravitate towards one product or the other.
Right. Especially because like a gaming session will last, you know, I think 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3
Sure.
for the typical person. If
Out.
you're a hardcore gamer, maybe you do 4 to 6 every night. But like a work session lasts for 8 hours, which is a lot longer than most people tend to game in one day, or at least more than most adults tend to game in one day.
Right.
And so, you have to be a bit more careful. You can't necessarily put, function over form at that point.
All right.
Okay. So thank you for joining me, Isaac. It's great to have you on again. I know this was a bit of an unusual show compared to what we've been doing lately, but I like to have these more low-key shows where we just sort of pull back the curtain and show people sort of like what's in the lab. And it was a great opportunity to bring you on to talk about the Razer stuff and have a nice back and forth.
I was happy to be here. I feel like we had a very casual conversation, and I picked up a thing or two. I hope our viewers did the same.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, folks. Be sure to look at for the full article, Best Wireless Mice, on tomshardware.com. It's already up, but it should be updated with a bunch of these by the end of the week. And I will see you next Thursday at 3 p.m. for another edition of the Tom's Hardware Show. Bye, everyone.